Hey everyone, and welcome to your Java tutorial on switch statements. As you can see, I have Visual Studio Code pulled up here. I will delete our hello world instruction and we can get into it. So for this tutorial, let's assume that I have had a new baby recently, which is actually true. On September 11th, we had a boy. So when you have a baby, a lot of new family members that you might not know from your spouse's side or your significant other's side come in and want to see the new baby. So a lot of people want to do this, but you don't always know or remember who they are, and you've got a foggy brain because you haven't been sleeping. So it would be good to have a program that tells you your relationship to these other people. So let's make one. So we are going to start out by taking in some user input. And for that, we will need a scanner class. And this, if you remember from our input and output tutorial, we need to import our Java util package. We can import the scanner class, and that should resolve this. So we will have a scanner object. And to create the new scanner object, we'll create a new scanner, and we will use the system.input stream. Cool, we have our scanner. We will do a system print line to say, enter your visitor's name. We will use our scanner to pull in the visitor's name. We'll create a variable here called visitor name, and we will set our visitor name equal to our scanner.nextLine. And so this will capture our user input here, right? And it'll store it in our visitor name. Now, what we need to do is create a way to figure out who this person is in relation to us, right? So for this, we can use a switch statement. And so a switch statement has a very unique purpose. And that purpose is to make the same logical check over a series of potential values, right? So if you remember to our previous tutorial on if statements, we have the if, else if, else if, else if, and those else ifs can keep going until the else block. A switch statement is very similar, except in all of those else ifs, you can have a different logical condition. In the switch statement, it's the same condition, and that's equivalence. It's that same equivalency condition throughout many possible values. And so the syntax for your switch statement is very simple because it facilitates that quick check. So a switch statement is a logical equivalence check for a single entered value that could have many potential values. Okay. And so the switch statement syntax, what does that look like? I'm going to create a multi-line comment here. And so that's going to look like we're going to use the switch keyword. We're going to take in our variable to be compared. We're going to open up our scope here in the same way that we did with our if-else statements. And then we're going to say case, and then we're going to have our comparison value here. And then we'll have a colon. And if that is the same, if that comparison value is the same as the value to be compared, then we will run our instruction, and then we have to use the keyword break. We use semicolons in both. And then we start the whole thing over again. We have a comparison value, colon. If that's true, we run an instruction, and then we break. If we don't use this break keyword, it'll keep going to the next case, to the next case, to the next case. Finally, when we're done, we can have just a default case, and then we run our default instruction and put in a break for posterity's sake. So this is the general syntax. So let's implement it. I'm going to do it up here, so it's a little bit closer to our existing code. So at this point, remember, we have our visitor name, and that is the variable to be compared, right? We need to compare that with all these other potential variables. So let's write in our switch. We do an open close parentheses, and then we're going to pass in our visitor name. Then we're going to open up our switch statement. We're going to have a case here. And so let's say one of the cases is Dave. And so we will say Dave. And if the visitor's name is Dave, then we're going to run this instruction. And that instruction is going to be to print out. It's going to be to print out, we'll say Grandpa. Our next case statement is going to be, I don't know, when. And if see, I made a mistake. We need to put our break here. If we don't put this break, it'll just keep going to the next case. So let's put in when system. So if our visitor's name is when, we will say, oh, that's your cousin. Next, and then we have to do our break again. We'll do another case statement here. And we'll say it's Jenny. And if our visitor's name is Jenny, then we will do a system.out.println, and we will say this is our aunt. And finally, we'll have our default case, system.out.println, and we will say if it's, you don't know them. Cool. Okay. So here is our program. We, have our scanner and our visitor name variable. We initially print out to the line, enter your visitor's name. We use our scanner to capture that text entry. We store it in our string variable. We take that string variable and put it in our switch statement. Remember, the switch statement will basically go through each one of these values, and we could have hundreds of them, but it can go through each one of these values, and it tries to match our visitor name to any of these cases. And if it does, you see I forgot another break here. If it does, then it'll execute the instruction, or any number of instructions until we hit this break. And if we don't have the break, it'll fall from one case to the next case. So let's run this. Okay, so we see enter your visitor's name, and I'm going to enter when in here. And let's see what happens. Yep, and so it prints out your cousin. So what happened was I entered when. They got stored in this visitor name variable up here, because remember, this is a string variable. That visitor name was then passed into our switch statement. Our switch statement says, hey, is visitor name equal to Dave? It's not. So it moves on to the next case. Hey, is visitor name equal to when? It was. So then we printed out our cousin text. So let's run it again. And this time we're going to print out Jenny. And as you can see, it printed back aunt, right? So it matched our visitor name with Jenny and executed our instruction. Now let's try it where it doesn't know anything. So let's say, oops, I'm typing in the actual program and not in here. We'll say Alexander, and you don't know him, so don't let him in. Awesome. So this is how a switch statement works really quickly. I am going to remove our break here, like I had done multiple times before, just to show you guys what happens when you mess up. So I didn't put the break in, so I'm going to put in Jenny. Let's run it. And so you can see it says, I put in Jenny, it printed out Ant, and then it moved to the next instruction, which was the default, and printed you don't know them. So remember, you have to have break, right? Or else it'll just keep on going. But yeah, so that's a switch statement. They're pretty straightforward. It's really good. Switch statements are really good when you just need to check the equivalency of one potential value or one value that you have for sure with a bunch of potential values. And so if you can match that one value with a potential value, you can execute your instructions. Yeah, and I prefer this to an if-else statement when it's appropriate. There are other times when you might need an if-else statement if you have different segments of logic or something that doesn't deal with equivalency. Then you can use an if-else, but a lot of times you're going to want to use switch in those scenarios. Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed this and learned a little bit, and thanks.